I'm in Haworth, home to one of the world's most famous literary families, the Brontes. Now the village where the Brontes lived and died has become a tourist attraction. But 150 years ago, this was a remote Yorkshire community blighted by poverty and disease. Patrick Bronte, who was vicar here, outlived all his children. Their early deaths were tragic, but they weren't unusual in a place where hardship was part of life. This is St Michael's Church in Haworth, where all but one of the Bronte sisters are buried, including Charlotte, the most successful in her lifetime and the beloved author of Jane Eyre.
I'm not going to die, am I? He wouldn't separate us, not when we've been so happy.
The death of Charlotte, so soon after her sisters, quickly turned into legend. She died young, like Anne and Emily, after a short, devastating illness. Almost immediately, the story of her death became famous. The poet Matthew Arnold wrote of Haworth graveyard and Charlotte's grave scattered with roses.
Alas, she goes on the path to the silent country and leaves half her laurels unwon, dying too soon.
The Bronte legend spread around the world, and relics of Charlotte are lovingly preserved.
You can see it's quite brown.
It's a sort of soft brown. It's more like the hair colour that she has in her portrait.
That's right, yeah. We know that Charlotte was very self-conscious about her appearance. She had the idea that she was very, very plain.
Millions believe the three sisters were picked off by tuberculosis, one by one. But the real truth about why Charlotte died is different, and the story starts inside the family parsonage. For a writer, it's a moving experience to visit the house where the sisters lived and worked. This is the dining room, where Charlotte and her sisters did most of their writing. The house was dominated by their father, Patrick, who was deeply religious. But it was because of her father's work as vicar of Haworth that Charlotte's life was transformed. In 1845, an Irish curate, Arthur Nichols, arrived to help Mr. Bronte. To Charlotte's surprise, Mr. Nichols fell in love with her.
Miss Bronte.
When he proposed marriage, she decided, after some hesitation, to say yes. In June 1854, Arthur married Charlotte at Haworth Church. She was 38.
You can see her physically, and in the letters you can see her falling in love with this man, and the way that he cared for her and he looked after her. You know, if she sat too near the rocks and near the sea, he came and put a rug round her and dragged her away from the edge, and she just loved that sense of being protected and cared for.
7 months after her marriage, Charlotte suddenly fell ill. It was here in this room, on the 31st of March 1855, that Charlotte Bronte died, only 3 weeks before her 39th birthday. So, what was the illness that killed her? On her deathbed, Charlotte wrote letters to her friends. They're the best clues about what was wrong with her.
This is written to her friend Amelia, very faint, very pencilled. And she's appealing here for Amelia to send her anything that she can think of which may ease her sufferings. And she goes into some detail here about her sufferings, the terrible nights, the excessive vomiting. And she says that she vomits until what she actually produces is mixed with blood. Amelia was probably the only one that had actually had a baby, and she's wanting advice, anything that can be sent that will ease the sufferings. And I think it's significant that she wrote to Amelia, and I think it helps confirm that Charlotte certainly believed she was pregnant.
Yes. According to her death certificate, Charlotte died of phthisis, a progressive wasting disease. But could it have been her pregnancy which killed her? I'm in Hull to find out more about the dangers of extreme sickness in pregnant women. Charlotte's problem wasn't unusual. 150 years later, many women still suffer the same problems during pregnancy.
Hi, Kayleigh, come on in.
Hi, thank you.
Take a seat.
KAYLEIGH Smith has hyperemesis, an illness which results in nausea and vomiting. Its cause is unknown, but it could be due to raised levels of a hormone in the first 4 months of pregnancy.
I couldn't get out of bed. Every time I attempted to, I would be sick. Every time I tried to eat or drink something, within about 2 minutes, it would come straight back up. Literally, if I needed to get up, the only reason was to go to the toilet, was literally crawling, hands and knees to get there, because I just physically had no energy. I felt really, really ill. I felt like there was something seriously wrong.
Val Maybury has 2 sons, Dan and Doug. During both pregnancies, she suffered the same symptoms as Charlotte Bronte.
I was hospitalised on a number of occasions
Really?
during each of the pregnancies, and that was really linked to severe dehydration in every case, so I had to be rehydrated.
When I was pregnant, I had a lot of nausea that was triggered by smells. Did you find that was your case?
I think I would say that certainly that smell was a factor, but I think it would be true to say that there wasn't a time when I didn't feel sick, and that I felt sick all the time.
Consultant Steve LINDOW treats many patients with very similar symptoms. How likely is it that Charlotte Bronte suffered from this?
I think it is quite likely, because she'd recently been married and these symptoms had come on quite acutely. People around her, I believe, thought that she was pregnant. So if those were the symptom complex and she was pregnant, undoubtedly hyperemesis would be a very logical diagnosis to make.
Could this have been what killed her?
In those days, undoubtedly, yes, because excessive vomiting without the ability to use intravenous fluids to replace fluid loss could result in dehydration, and that could be fatal.
The secret of what caused Charlotte Bronte's death was buried with her beneath this church. We'll never know for sure. But with the benefit of modern medical knowledge, it seems increasingly likely that it was hyperemesis.
She had all the symptoms, starting off with the early morning sickness, which then wouldn't go away, and the sickness, the low fever, gets worse and worse until she eventually has to take to her bed because she's too weak. She can't keep any food or drink down. She's vomiting literally blood because she's straining so much, and there is this constant low fever as well. So that all points to me to being hyperemesis.
It's been a humbling experience to walk in Charlotte's footsteps. She died young, and her unborn child died with her. But I think, 150 years later, she'd be pleased to know that our fascination with her life and work lives on.